So, Power Ballad is directed by John Carney, who 10 years ago, he made a film called Sing Street, which was just, I love that movie. It was inspirational, it was heartfelt, and it explored the joys and the heartbreak that come from music when when you're young and you just got like a song in your heart, you just want to bring it out. And his latest film, Power Ballad, follows those familiar sensations, but for a different time in life. And because while Sing Street dug deep into the youthful inspirations to start a band and fall in love, Power Ballad delves into the fears of getting older, becoming irrelevant, and losing sight of passion with a desire to recapture that magic. All of it goes down in a way that doesn't feel like a routine, like, just focusing on the washed up musician, because it's focusing more on where to go instead of just, the places that we can never return to. The movie is about two generations of musical talents that converge at just the right time in Ireland. There's Rick Power, who's played by Paul Rudd, who is a singer who has settled for a life in Dublin, reducing himself to a band that plays at weddings rather than concerts. And then there's Danny Wilson, played by Nick Jonas, who is a former boy band member struggling to make his solo career take off. They cross paths at a wedding where they perform together, and they have an immediate connection that forms as they blend their voices with a classic song about the good old days. And their love of not just singing music, but also writing it comes out at their kind of little private after party where they just kind of sit around, they drink, they write, and they start just jamming all night long. And they start revealing a lot of their fears and their passions and what makes them love music, and what are the importance of the lyrics they want to convey and what it says about their life. And just there's just like such a spark of creativity and friendship between them. There is no scrutiny from audiences that want to hear the same songs or producers who demand something better. No, it's just two dudes connecting over to guitars and pianos in a rather charming and intimate session. But their fateful meeting takes a dark turn as Rick reveals too much of himself with his personal song called How to Write a Song Without You. In Danny's desperation to maintain his lavish lifestyle, he gives Rick's song a shot, and it turns out to be the perfect love song. And taking the form of a hit single, Rick feels betrayed by his most heartfelt song being stolen from him. And it's all the more heartbreaking that he can't find any recording of his work in progress, and his family and bandmates can't recall the lyrics. Nobody believes Rick, and it's enough to drive him mad, threatening his enduring romance with his wife Rachel and his daughter Aja, who has a patient acceptance of him, and his faithfulness to his simple pal of Sandy, played by Peter McDonald. So a story like this could easily go astray by centering on Rick's frustrations with his personal song being ripped from his heart, and thankfully it doesn't, because in a quiet moment, Rick gives his dismissive daughter a listen to his latest project, and she confesses that songs about falling in love are more appealing to old people than to her generation. So when Rick asks what the new generation of teens like to hear about in their music, she gives the amusing answer of revenge. And indeed, this could very much turn into a story of revenge, especially when Rick decides to track down Danny in Los Angeles. This quest, however, turns out to be less about revenge and more about the need to be honest, with a greater emphasis on addressing the phony nature of fame on a more internal level. So Paul Rudd fits like a glove into the story, where he can effortlessly be funny without trying too hard for laughs, but also comes off like a musician who loves his craft. And this is crucial, considering how inauthentic he could come off against Nick Jonas with his boy band background. And their musical scenes together are engrossing and they're sweet as they try to figure out what they want to express, sharing their fears and passions. And those moments work so well that there's genuine heartbreak when the betrayal comes and a friendship is just shattered. And Rick's real friends and his family become a greater source of strength, even with his regrets about never achieving his dreams of playing at Madison Square Garden. All of this manages to be heartfelt and hilarious without, relying on the goofy antics that could befall a picture that features a car crash, a fist fight, and a tumbling off the roof. So Power Ballad finds more of the rousing spirit and music beyond the vibrant voices, the cool guitars, and a longing for rock and roll. Carney's staging of music might be debatable for staging the #1 love song in the world, but there's no denying the heaps of humanity he places behind the notes and lyrics. It would be impressive enough to frame Rudd and Jonas as equal musicians, but finding the joy and soul of that art in the process makes this film so much more cozier than I expected it to be. It's just a wonderful film for the way it doesn't embrace the obnoxious divide between generations in music, but still has some honesty about the passage of time. As when Rick's band struggles to figure out boy bands, with Rick admitting, are we stoned or just old? And he just kind of like casually states that in a way that makes it very, very natural. It's a very natural performance from Paul Rudd. And as for Nick Jonas, he's a very like insecure member of a boy band who's struggling to find his voice. And I think a lot of that, it comes from a more genuine place with him, that I wasn't too surprised that he gave a pretty good performance. So, going back to Paul Rudd's statement, are we stoned or just old? Like, we can be old and stoned, but still make connections over music that comes more from the heart than from a label. So yeah, Power Ballad, it's not as great as Sing Street, but I hold that film in such a high regard. But I think, for focusing on kind of like what seems like the twilight years of musicians, I think it did a pretty good job finding the sweetness in there, especially with the way that the way that Rick connects with Sandy is very, very charming. And there's a few moments where they break down in tears, and especially the initial jam session between Paul Rudd and Nick Jonas is very man. It's fun to just hang out with those two dudes. So I think for that focus, I think on male friendships, the film just knocks that aspect out of the park while still presenting some charming notes of music here and finding that genuine inspiration about wanting to sing rock and roll, even if you don't end up being a success that plays at Madison Square Garden. You can still be yourself, and you can still express yourself in a very meaningful way. So yeah, that's what made me love the hell out of Power Ballad.